even fucking cry.
Monkey D. Goofy. D. Goofy. I'm just flopping this bad guy.
Why would they do that, bro?
Bro, because it's get you ready, don't Yeah! No!
What's good, everybody? It's your boy T-Rav. I'm here again, another movie review, and right now we have Baz Luhrmann's, hope I said that right, ELVIS. Now, I want to start off by saying that biopic films have different challenges than most movies, so I don't exactly grade them the same because a lot of people are going to come to it with already preconceived biases just based on like you saw these events play out in real life, and yes, there's going to be things that they exaggerate or that they change up a little bit maybe to kind of match just what Hollywood does. They exaggerate things, they make things a little bit more sensational, and they may dramatize things a little more than how they actually may have happened. But what I have to appreciate about this movie in particular is talking about that real stuff that was going on with Elvis and his inspirations, the people around him that helped him get to where he was. You could really tell that, I think it was Priscilla Presley, his wife, she wouldn't give the go-ahead with this movie unless they made it a certain way to really touch on not only the different struggles that Elvis was going through, but the people that really influenced him. You had people like B.B. King, Charlie Ward, Mahalia Jackson. Like, there was a lot of African-American influence on him, and you could definitely tell that just based on his style and how he was moving different than other people. He was, and I love how, the governor and different people that they showed in the movie was talking about, he's moving like a, like a black man. And that was very controversial for the time, especially when he came out. He was coming up in like the late 50s, things like that. Obviously, the time period that he's coming up in is very tumultuous with all the civil rights and things like that. But it was just cool to see just how much he stuck to that in terms of just who he was really about, how he came up, because he came up very, very poor. I mean, he had to move away with his mother after his father got put in jail due to writing a bad check. Not that he's a bad guy, but you're going to see that his business acumen, it affects Elvis way later down the line as well. And so he's coming up in a very, very poor town with a lot of other African-American kids. It's basically the only other people that was around, but he was friends with them, and they're running around doing normal kid stuff. But then he finally discovers one day, they go and they peek inside of this shack where they hear the music coming from. And I don't know who the guy is, but you can already tell that he's just starstruck based on like the soul, the rhythm and blues sound, and how like country music like evolved from that and things like that. So I have to give credit, and just rock and roll in general, his mix of the rhythm and blues, the country music influence, the rock and roll, you really get to see how he cultivated that. And I love how they actually told you how he didn't really write a lot of the songs he did. Yeah, he tweaked them to a degree, but a lot of it was songs that was already out there, that was a staple in the black community, and songs that white America had never heard before. But he really got to take it to that next level. So you see him at first, and he's got a touch of buzz because one of his songs has gotten on the radio, and he's still coming up with his first little band, and they're a very tight-knit little group. He's got a little girlfriend, and he's even nervous at first just because you can tell he's never really been on that big stage before, and that's where Tom Hanks sees him, the Colonel. Oh my God, this man is on the madness. This man is literally the devil himself. If not for this dude, Elvis would have probably went to live on much longer, and you'll get to see the different things that he did to him. But when he saw him do that first performance and how the crowd reacted, and people was clowning him at first because he's wearing like He's wearing a little bit of makeup. You know, he's got his hair a certain way. He's dressed all flashy and all that. But when it came to the time to hit that stage, you could tell from jump, man was a star. And when Tom Hanks was looking out at the people in the crowd, and he looked at this one girl in particular, and he said, I could tell that this girl was going through something she had never experienced before, and how she was feeling a certain pleasure and a feeling that she wasn't even sure that she should enjoy, but she couldn't help it. And that shit was fire. Now, obviously, a lot of these chicks just wanted to fuck him, but the man was doing stuff that you had never seen before. He's moving and grooving, and he's wiggling, and he's doing the slides. He's standing up on his toes. Like, he was really and truly a showman. It's so exaggerated, but even in the studio, when he's recording the songs, he can't just sing the songs. He has to move and do his style in order to actually make it come out like how he knows how to do. And you could tell from right there that the man was just going to be on another path. Now, the Colonel comes to him and is able to kind of swindle his way and slide in and become his manager and make him cut ties with all types of different people, including his original band, his girlfriend, and all that. But Elvis, like, he doesn't understand what the Colonel's doing. All he knows is that he wants to become a star. He wants to take it to that next level. And his mother has reservations because he has these big dreams, but she could tell that, like, the way the rest of the country is going to view you is not going to be like how I view you. And plus, like, I don't want you to be chasing just this money and think that's all there is to life, because we've struggled, but we've always kept a roof over our head. And I know that you want to provide and do all these different things for the family, but that's not what it's all about. But he ends up going ahead and making the decision to go ahead and go on these tours and things like that. And he's starting off touring at this carnival because that's what the Colonel's running, basically. He's running his own little show. And man, it's really sad, just because if he had some better people around him, like Jerry Schilling from Rolling Stones, who comes through later and kind of resurrects the man's career, because, you know, the Colonel he refers to himself as the snowman. You know, he brings the snow, he brings the money, all the flash, all the fluff, all the things that build the brand that makes Elvis into a megastar. He basically created merchandising in this movie. I'm not sure if that's fact or not, but that's what it seems like, is that he's the one that really took merchandising to that next level. He came up with the pillows, he came up with the little buttons and all types of different little things, putting his face on toys and everything. And there was one cool moment in that where he's like, he's got buttons that say I love Elvis, but he also has a button that says I hate Elvis. And his mother found that one. He said, I hate Elvis. And she couldn't understand it at first. But then Tom Hanks was explaining to her that there's going to be a bunch of people that love your son, but there's also going to be a bunch of people that hate him as well. And regardless of whether we profit on it or not, so we might as well take in those ducats too. So I got to respect the business acumen of the Colonel at first, and how he's basically covering all the bases that he needs to in order to take Elvis to that next level. And you see it happens very quickly. Like, he gets the Graceland house, he starts buying all these cars and all these different things, and you can already start to see that the people around him, whether it's his family or just, I guess, like his friends that he brought along from Memphis and all that, they're kind of they're reaping the benefits, no doubt about it. There's a whole lot of yes men around him, and not a lot of people telling him how it needs to be. Now, where the conflict starts coming in is that he's so radical with his style and so unique for white America, because he's exuding all these qualities that African Americans have done for a long, long time. And Elvis even notes that. It's like, you know, they've been doing this for a lot longer than I have, and that's okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do my thing, because that's how I feel. That's how I I don't know. It's really hard to explain because he gives so much credit to them, but he always does stay true to himself because pressure starts getting put on him from the government and all that. And obviously there's segregation rallies being held and things like that. And he's growing in his influence so much that they start to crack down on him and say, if you start, doing all this dancing and this wiggling and all this stuff, you're going to start getting canceled. So a lot of states start cracking down and saying, yeah, Elvis can't come here. He can't do this. He can't do this show. He can't be on this TV show, whatever. And it culminates in this one, the Bruce Allen show, I think it was, where he almost tries to put on this the Colonel comes up with this new persona for Elvis where it's family friendly and he's not dancing and he's singing his songs, but that's not really him. And you could tell from jump that he hates it. He's like, it's the most embarrassing thing I ever did in my life. They brought up an actual hound dog and stuff, basically to make fun of me, which they weren't. They thought they were just doing a friendly kind of TV show, but it was taken away from his mystique, his luster, and all the showmanship that he provides with his total package. You know what I'm saying? It's all of that stuff is a part of Elvis, not just the songs and the singing. And this goes on for a while, and you can tell it's good for business in a way, but a lot of fans are starting to push back on him and say, like, we want the old Elvis back. What happened to the old Elvis? This new Elvis sucks. And I know they did this out of response to the pressure that they were feeling to keep on getting shows and things like that and keep sponsors and all this other stuff, because they were coming up with nicknames like Elvis the Pelvis and it's just childish shit, which is really funny. But that just shows you back then, like, America wasn't really ready for somebody like him, someone so new and fresh, to be, influencing white America as much as he was. The man was an icon, a superstar, right? And he goes on doing that for a bit, but it gets to a boiling point where he goes and he performs at this baseball game, and the cops are escorting him there and all that. And, they say, if you wiggle as much as a finger, we're gonna arrest you and things like that. And I love, probably a few days earlier, he left the house and all this because everybody was just saying, oh, you just got to do what you got to do and then we can get back to business as usual. And he's like, no, forget all that. And his mother's upset with him and she's drinking a lot because, she wants him to just focus on, his career and things like that, but also to realize that she didn't want all this in the first place. But, that's not stopping you from reaping the benefits either. Let's be real. This man has changed y'all's life tremendously. What do you expect this man to do? Stop and not try and provide for the entire family? No, he's gonna do what he has to do in order to change y'all's life and give y'all everything that y'all ever wanted. And he tells his mother, it's like, this is terrible for me. This is horrendous. I'm so embarrassed that I can't even really face my fans no more like that. I'm not being myself. There's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. And she breaks it down to him that, your gift and your dancing and all that, that's a gift from God. Because when he was little, after hearing the dude in the shack singing and doing his stuff, he went over to a revival church. It was an all black church, obviously, and he kind of snuck in there, and the other little black boys were saying, hey, you gotta get out of there, you gotta get out of there. And then the preacher comes and grabs his arm and is like, no, he's with the Spirit. And you could tell all that, the gospel, the rhythm and blues culture, it all played a big impact on him. And I just love how they really take their time and show how much African Americans influenced him. And shout out to B.B. King, because when he was having all these doubts, he left the house in a hurry. He went over to Memphis. He was already in Memphis. He went over to Beale Street in particular, which is basically the hub for all of black culture. Tons of humongous black entertainers. performing at these little bars and things like that, and BB King's up there, and dude is saying Tutti Frutti's up there, and he's killing it, and he just goes and hangs out there for the night, and it comes to the end of the night, and he's talking with BB, and he breaks it down for him. He's like, I don't know what to do, because they say if I do my thing, then I'm gonna get put in jail and stuff like that, and I can't go away like that, because what's gonna happen to my family? And he said, Elvis, I can't even walk across the street without people giving me the side eye. You're a white boy and a superstar at that. Too many people are making too much money off of you to throw you in jail. That might be different from me, but not you. And that's what led to that performance at the baseball game, where the colonel keeps telling him, okay, all you gotta do is just sing the song, have fun, yada yada. And he gets up there, and even though with all the pressure from the governor and the police and all this other stuff, and he gets up there and breaks it down, there's a lot of talk about the new Elvis. And a lot of people say a lot of things, but at the same time, you gotta listen to the people you love. But most importantly, you gotta listen to yourself. And then he wiggles the finger, and then he starts going in, son. And the people start doing a madness. I mean, the segregating ropes that are blocking off the white crowd from the black crowd, they start intermingling a bit, and then of course the police start swarming in, beating their fucking ass, and then they rush the stage when he takes it a little bit too far, and they drag him off the stage and all that. Which I think it was a great move. I mean, I don't think that in that moment you could not do that. You know what I'm saying? You have to go through with that and be yourself, because that is who the people wanted to see. They wanted to see that real Elvis, not this new sham that's just a shadow of his former self. And he's still very early in his career at this point. So I just have to respect him for getting up there and doing that with all that pressure on him. I mean, there's a segregation rally being held 10 miles away or something like that by the governor. And he went out there and did it regardless. But what comes after that is that they are actually trying to throw him in jail. But they give him a choice. You either go to the army or you go to jail. Now, I still don't think they would have put him in jail for real, but he can't get out of the army obligation because the selective service has drafted him. Obviously, that's not random, but they go ahead and they draft him, and the colonel breaks it down that, you gotta go and do this, just because what they're gonna do is they're gonna start digging into your family's background. Your father has a questionable past, and if you do this and dodge the draft, then they're gonna start saying that you come from a family of degenerates and delinquents, and how this isn't the clean-cut all-American boy that we want you to be, and you're gonna really start scaring people off, and you won't be able to get business like that. So just go do these 2 years, come back, hair trimmed up, all that, and you'll be good. And so he goes and he does that, even though he doesn't want to, and he does meet Priscilla out there, but very early on into his service, his mother has been drinking more and more all this time and worrying and stuff like that, and she passes away. Probably just from the stress and worrying about Elvis, and it's a tough situation. And that was a tough scene. That was very sad. And his father's overwhelmed, but the colonel goes to him. He's like, "You need to go speak to your son. He's struggling right now." And he's like, "I'm too overwhelmed myself. I can't do it." But he trusts you. Can you go talk to him? He's like, "Oh, that's not my place." And all the while, you know what the fuck this nigga's so greasy in this movie, and I love it. You have to respect the grease, because this man, he goes up there and he gives him the fucking pep talk of the century, dog. He does convince it, going through with the draft, all that stuff, go through his service, and talking about how he's like, "I'll stay here, I'll work, I'll worry about all this, and I'll hold it down for you. That way, when you come back, you'll be a megastar." Even more so. And he goes and he does that. He comes back. And this is where the Colonel had good ideas, but then he also started taking it too far. He starts putting him in all these motion pictures with Hollywood and stuff like that. And it is going well at first, but then it starts to get stale after a while. And then he starts trying to put him in Christmas specials and having to be the sponsor for appliance companies and like all this stuff. And when you're just trying to reach and grab for all this ancillary things instead of focusing on the music itself, that's where you go wrong. And plus, you won't even really let him be himself. Like, his hair is more trimmed up now. He's more clean cut because he went to the army, did his time, came back. But that's not who Elvis really is. And plus, you're having him be a part of all these things. Like, you can tell his career is going down the drain. And that's where my nigga Jerry Schilling comes in. Now, I'm not sure how long Jerry Schilling had been doing his thing up to that point, but Elvis had reached out to him, and he's sitting up on the Hollywood sign, and the whole family basically pulls up on him except for his dad and the Colonel and all that. And they have him meet with Elvis, and he asked him, he's like, so where do y'all think that my career is right now? And Jerry just comes out like the other dude tries to kind of beat around the bush for saying, he's like, your career's in the toilet as we speak, okay? Because people just aren't that interested to see you anymore. You gotta get back to who you are. Come out, wear the leather jacket. Stop with all this other stuff. Stop with the motion pictures. Stop with all the different salesman shit you're trying to do. Don't do Christmas specials. No one wants to really see that, to be honest. Do your thing, and we will come up with more production stuff in order to make you back into who you really are. And you can tell already it starts to work immediately, but the Colonel's getting in his head because he's doing these little performances on TV, things like that, with live audience and things like that. And he's like, oh, that's not real. I could do, and that was just saying, I know when I'm getting a reaction out of the crowd and if they're really liking what I'm doing. And he's like, that's all fake, that's not real. They have a red sign that's saying applause when they need to applaud. So don't think that you're doing something. This is an embarrassment. You're ruining everything, because he's not doing the Christmas special like they had hoped and they had signed up to do. He's really just doing what he wants to do, which is the best move that he can do. But the Colonel's just steady trying to push back on it. And honestly, this is where he should have went ahead and cut ties with this nigga, man. Like, and their family's big on loyalty, and you could tell that. And this man really took him to that next level from being a nobody. But at the same time, it's like, you can tell he doesn't have your best interests at heart in terms of being a performer. And he goes ahead and he keeps doing how he wants to do, which is obviously the right thing to do. And the friction's building up between him and the Colonel more and more. And during this time, this is when the Kennedy assassinations happen, and it culminates in Martin Luther King being shot and killed. And you can tell how much that affects him. And the Colonel keeps telling him, you can't talk about that stuff. Let's not get involved in religion or politics. Elvis doesn't make statements, yada, yada, yada. But a couple years later, he does end up making a song that really puts him back on top. I forget the name of the song, but it's a dope song, because you can tell he just couldn't hold back anymore and bite his tongue with everything that's going on in the country. He had to speak on this stuff. He's like, the Colonel was saying, this has nothing to do with us. And he was like, what are you talking about? This has everything to do with us. I can't sit here and do nothing. And he makes this song, and he's back on top, like cover of all the magazines, doing the big shows again, all that. And he goes through a couple more years, and he's gonna fire, what's his name? He's gonna fire the Colonel. But the Colonel doing what the Colonel does, he fucking slithers in like a fucking snake in the grass, and he convinces him that he shouldn't go on an international tour yet. because they don't have enough money to really support it. But if he just does this little show, you know, it's like do this international concert, but it's not really international concert. It's at this brand new international hotel in Vegas. Then you'll be good, and you know, you take a residency here just for like a couple years, and then in time, we'll have the money to go and do this international tour where they're talking about how they're gonna pay him $1 million a night, stuff like that. But over time, he keeps doing that show, and people start running up on stage to try and, like, you know, low key assassination attempts. We're not really sure if it was really going to get to that level, but people are starting to get more rowdy in the country, and other entertainment stars are dying because, you know, security's not right, and people are killing them. So that becomes a growing concern, and the Colonel uses that as an opening to truly convince him that we can't do an international tour right now. How about we just stay here in America, and we'll do the biggest venues and the biggest places all around America, but we'll also do like satellite concerts so you can give your performances to the rest of the world, but I can control everything and the security and all that. Which really and truly, he didn't. It was never really about the security. Elvis was big enough where you could manage all that other little stuff and get in the proper security when he's going international, but it never really lets him get to that point. And what you find out is that the Colonel has a whole lot of debts because the Colonel doesn't actually really exist. Now, when I say that, it's not like some Inception shit or nothing like that. No, it's that he came to this country illegally. He doesn't have a passport and all this other stuff because it turns out he comes from Holland, and the implication is that he was like a Nazi. All right, came here on asylum and things like that. But you know, he's got a lot of debts. He doesn't officially exist, and even the governor of Memphis and all that, I don't know if they knew that in particular, but they knew that his background was highly, highly questionable, to say the least. And I think they actually did know who he was, which was one thing that I was questioning. It's like, why would they even let any of this whole thing continue at that point if they had found a runaway Nazi? Like, let's be real, fam. Back then, if they found one of them niggas, you're done. All right, ain't no more doing nothing. All right. So that was one thing that I kind of questioned, but you know, we kind of let that slide by. And he's taking up this residency, doing all that, and then one year he checks into a hospital for exhaustion, and they're still wanting to do the international tour at this point. But that's when the Colonel suggests, you know what, let's not do that. Let's just stick to a national tour, and we'll do the biggest venues and all that stuff. It'll be 15 days, 15 nights, and you're done. Right, just 15 shows and you're good. But at that point, Elvis's health is failing, and they have a doctor on staff, Dr. Nick, who's literally there to like help this nigga sleep, shooting him up to sleep, and then firing him back up so he can perform and all that. And he starts going through trouble with his marriage and things like that, and his wife even leaves him because he's essentially killing himself for the music and for the people and all that. But because he's not realizing that the Colonel is basically forcing him into this, and you know, he's got little side pieces and things like that, but his wife breaks it down to him because she does come to him one day and say, I'm leaving you and I'm taking Lisa Marie, our daughter. It's like, listen, when's the last time that we laughed together? When's the last time that we sat down and had dinner as a family? Like, I don't even know who you are anymore. I could care less about the girls and things like that that are coming to see you at like in the dead of night. Like, I know that's going on. That's like part of the road, and that's commendable to a degree because that didn't seem to be the problem for her, even though I do think the Colonel kind of exaggerated that stuff for him and facilitated that, because there was one show when Priscilla is there and watching him perform, and then he's seeing him kiss all these ladies and stuff like that, and obviously that's part of the showmanship that's building up the mystique who Elvis is. But then you can see the Colonel kind of over to the side. I could see that she could never understand the love that he had for you, the people. I was like, oh man, this man's so greasy, dog. But when she's leaving him, it's like, you need to take care of yourself. You're not gonna last if you continue to do this. And so it basically continues on like that, but not just for 1 year. He does it like for 4 straight years. And that's when you come towards the end of the movie where you can tell he's literally on his last legs. Because there's one show he's heading to and he literally like passes out, and we don't know if he's going through some type of heart event or whatever, but he just passes out in the hallway heading up to the stage, and the colonel rolls up on him, and it's like, the most important thing is that he gets up on that stage and performs tonight. And this nigga's obviously dying, son. Like, it's crazy. He's working himself to death. And, you know, he kind of puts the squeeze on his father, who's his business manager at the time. So fucking ridiculous, boy. And he's like, oh, this is a ELVIS Enterprises, decision. What do you want to do? And he's like, oh, I guess he's got to perform. And Dr. Nick shoots him up and fires him up, and he goes and he does a great show and all that. But you could tell that when you got too many people around you that are just simply there for the benefits and not there for you, that's when it really and truly becomes a problem. And that's always been the case, but you would have thought that after a while that the father would put his foot down and see what's happening to his son. His mother's already died years before just due to stress and worrying about him. Imagine what he's going through to have to do all these shows, and he's having to take drugs to go to sleep. He's having to take drugs to wake up and just get through the days and shit like that. The man is literally dying before your very eyes. You can't do nothing to stop that. You're so blinded by the greed and by the money that he's bringing to your family that you're willing to risk his life. That's unacceptable. And in that way, I blame you more than I blame the colonel, because that's where it should have been done, fam. Like, at that point, you still possibly could have saved this nigga. But he does that for so long, and then he starts taking more drugs because he's become chemically dependent on different stuff. And it's making him go a little bit crazy. He's thinking that people are coming to assassinate him and stuff like that. And he's got guns in his room. And he's running outside thinking that people are coming to kill him and different stuff like that. And just different stuff like that keeps happening. And after a while, he does realize, like, oh, I got to get out of this thing with the colonel. And he kind of flips out on him because he's super drugged up one show. And he just flips out on the colonel, and he kind of exposes him in front of everybody about the debts that he has and how he doesn't exist. And I love the symbolism with how some of the songs talk about how he's trapped in a cage and he can't get out. The different symbolic stuff that he talks about how, you know, he's a big comic book fan and how one day he's just gonna leave and fly away. He was a big fan of Captain Marvel. Now he's gonna fly to the Rock of Eternity and different stuff like that. And it comes full circle when he tries to get out of his contract with the colonel and go do this international tour. The colonel has kept records all this time about the different promotional stuff and expenses that he's loaned towards their operation. And he comes back with saying that how they owe him like $9 million, things like that. It's just so fucked up. And the colonel had gone to big high rollers at Vegas to keep doing that residency that he had, and he was basically brokering a deal for ELVIS, saying how he's gonna get $1 million for the next 5 years, so $5 million in total. He's like, so now that's what my boy expects. What are you gonna do for me? And the deal that they were coming up with is to strike away all his debts and then provide him an unlimited amount of credit, which is that just shows you right there what type of nigga this was. You think at times that he really does care about ELVIS, but at the same time, he doesn't. He views himself as equal, like they was really partners. Like, no, you're not partners, my nigga. You're not. It was gonna get to a point regardless that Elvis was gonna become a megastar. And yeah, you did a lot. You provided all the merchandise and the different ideas like that, but you also were working toward his detriment for years with the Christmas specials, with the motion pictures that people was getting tired of and wanted no part of no more. And it's just he couldn't understand that. He couldn't understand it. But I have to say, I gotta give Tom Hanks his due for this movie. Shout out to the dude Austin Butler who did play Elvis. I thought he did a really good job, but Tom Hanks was just running circles around everybody in this movie. Because when he had his last speech with Elvis, talking about how we're just two odd, lonely children searching for eternity. And that's the thing about eternity. We'll always come up just short. And it's like, that shit hits so hard, man, because it's so symbolic about the entire movie. And when Elvis does end up hopping on his plane for one of the last times to go finish up the shows before the international tour, he talks about how there's this one bird that doesn't have legs, and how when it flies, it never comes down. And when it sleeps on the wind. And the only time that it lands is when it dies. And that was just a perfect summation of all the stuff that happened in this movie. Once he got on the path, he started pushing so hard and flying so high, he just got too close to the sun. And the movie started with the Colonel monologuing about how people say that I killed Elvis. People say that the drugs killed Elvis. But at the end of the day, it was his love of the stage, of the people, and of performing for the masses. That's what really drove him to his death. And I do see that to a degree, but let's be real, my nigga, you killed him, okay? You force-fed him drugs, basically, to keep him going, keep making you money. You try and fuck him in the end by screwing him and all his family out of everything. He ends up having to crawl back to you and stay with you because it would have been just too costly and they would have basically been bankrupt if he tried to take all the money that he claimed that they owed him. And it's just like, you forced this nigga into an early grave. There's no doubt about it. I don't accept anything else. I do get what he's saying about Elvis and his love for the people, and now that's what really killed him. You could make that argument, but if you watch this movie, you will understand that the Colonel was the reason why this nigga died, okay? He would have lived a lot longer if he just never got involved with him in the first place and had more of the right people around him. But all in all, I give this movie a 7 out of 10. I do think it ran a little long in the tooth. Now, obviously, it's going to be a 1 of 1. They're not going to make another one or anything like that. And that's fine, but I do think that we could have trimmed the fat a little bit. It was 2 hours and 40 minutes long, so it was quite long. And I do feel like in the last hour or so, at that point, you're kind of like, okay, we got to, get more towards the end and stuff like that. But I do think it was a really good movie, very symbolic, but very real at the same time. Like I said, with all his different influences, the people around him, that's just a lesson that people gotta learn, man. When you're on a path to greatness, you have to have people that tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. You can't just have a bunch of yes men around you, because in the end, that's what's going to lead to your downfall more than anything. You have to have people that is there for you, not the things that you provide them. And that's who the Colonel was, through and through. And it's sad to really, if this movie is completely accurate, which not every biopic film is, but like I said, Priscilla Presley had a heavy hand in describing like how she wasn't going to go through with this movie unless they did it a certain way, the right way. And the way she depicted the Colonel and all his influences, that seems more real to me than former Elvis biopics and things like that I've come across in my time. So like I said, 7 out of 10. Tom Hanks shined, my nigga. This is Tom Hanks, fam. You don't give me Midway. Don't give me Chappie and all these other nonsense. Alright? Give me Tom Hanks, man. That's that nigga. Alright, but I do wish we had a few more actors that could have held up to par. I'm not saying it had to be big time actors, even if they're no names, but the only other one that did decent in my mind is the guy who played Elvis. But even still, like, you could tell there's levels to this. You know what I'm saying? Music for the most part was fire. There was a couple of choices that they threw in there. I think it was like Meg Thee Stallion's remix of Hound Dog or something. Like, just get that out of here. We don't need to hear that. Instead of doing that, why not just play more of the rhythm and blues classic songs that show how Memphis was or whatever back in that time? Like, give me more of that. That was fire stuff, and remaster that stuff. I just didn't understand why they felt the need to include some of the musical choices they did. They didn't do it a whole lot because it is mostly Elvis music and, you know, Tutti Frutti and different things like that. But it was unnecessary to me. I thought the directing was top notch. Just cinematography as a whole is really good. And yeah, so that's pretty much all I got on this movie. I definitely recommend it. It's one of the better biopic films I've seen in a long time. I would certainly say that besides like Straight Outta Compton, I think this is better than Straight Outta Compton, to be real. I honestly do. I think it's very, very well done, very real, and I mean, damn, it almost shouldn't have been called Elvis, dog. It should have been called the Snowman. Okay, the Snowman and the Showman. The Colonel took this movie over, fam. I must say. But let me know what y'all thought about the movie if you seen it. Did you like how they was keeping it real with all the influences that he had? Did you respect the fact that they were showing how he didn't write a lot of these songs, but he still took it to another level with how he was doing it? Tell me what your whole general thoughts are on Elvis as a whole, this movie, and Tom Hanks, baby. Whoa. But like, comment, subscribe, sweet, what T-Rav, I'm out. Yeah, dope movie.